What's up, everybody? On today's show, we're going to hear what the SEC coaches had to say ahead of some of their Week 4 games. We've got some big matchups this week, like Ole Miss at Alabama, Arkansas at LSU, and Auburn at A&M. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 or more infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, got plenty to get into. Let's do it. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start recapping some of the highlights of Wednesday's coaches teleconference, some of the notes the coaches had to say going around the conference. So we start over at Ole Miss as Lane Kiffin talking highly about his team heading into the Week 4 matchup against Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and talking about his quarterback, Jaxson Dart, who is off to an incredible start so far. Like Kiffin saying, I think challenges and adversity make us all better, and Jaxson has played extremely well despite some skill player injuries around him. He's trying to put the offense on his back there the last couple of weeks. He's done a good job. Kiffin noted that Jaxson Dart's parents instilled a tough mindset into him, saying that his parents, that tough mindset. His mom ran marathons. His dad was a safety. He said, so he has that in him, which is good. We just got to be smart when we use it. But he's got a very competitive, tough side to him. Jaxson Dart has thrown for over 850 yards, 7 touchdowns, and a pick this year. And look, despite the early success that Ole Miss has had, Lane Kiffin saying, we haven't been in the best shape. He said, we still got a lot to accomplish, and we're trying to get healthy. He said, we still got a lot of question marks. Did not play well on defense last week. We talked about all the injuries on offense. We haven't played a snap with our highly decorated receiver, Zachary Franklin, that we signed. We haven't played a snap with the highly decorated tight end that was supposed to be our starting end. And Trey Harris has been out a little while. He was leading the country in touchdown catches when he got hurt. So we got some issues. They're hoping to get some of those key players back this week. So we'll see what Ole Miss looks like this week heading into the Alabama game. Now, over at Alabama, Nick Saban and the Tide going back to Jalen Milroe at quarterback. And we'll see what they look like against Ole Miss. But speaking on his weekly teleconference this week, Nick Saban talking about Jaxson Dart, saying, look, we thought he was a really good player last year. I think he's playing extremely well this year. Can't really say there's a great comparison, but he's throwing the ball well. Always a threat as a runner. He's tough, great competitor. Will be really challenging for us. Nick Saban went on, was asked about the parity in the SEC this year. He said, I think there's more parity, and I think that is because there's more multiples of ways to bring players to your team. I think sometimes the stronger teams lose some of their depth of their team that goes someplace elsewhere to play. I think some of the teams that are trying to improve have more opportunity to do that because they have greater resources where they can get players, especially more experienced players through the transfer portal. Again, Alabama going back to Jalen Milroe. Saban was asked about Milroe and how he's been handling everything. He says he's doing good. I think his energy's been good. I think his attitude's been great. I think the execution has been good. So all of that is good. Ty Simpson now taking reps with the second team. He said right now, Ty getting most of the work with the twos. I thought he did a good job when he went in the game. So kind of earned the right to be the backup. I'm sure that he'll continue to compete, try to get better, and that'll be good for us. A few more notes for Alabama. Offensive lineman Tyler Booker, Saban said, is practicing, as well as D lineman Jaheim Oates. He said they haven't had any issues. That doesn't mean they're still not day-to-day in terms of coming back or getting over their injuries, but they are practicing. So that's a good sign for both of those guys. Ole Miss at Alabama, slated for this Saturday, 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern, will be on CBS. Alabama currently on a 7-game win streak against Ole Miss in a series they laid 54-10-2. So a very one-sided victory there. But Lane Kiffin and company would love to get that victory over Nick Saban. We'll see what happens this coming weekend. Over at Auburn, they're going to face one of their most difficult challenges heading into Kyle Field this year, where, freshmen, young players tend to struggle when they go on the road for the first time. And Hugh Freeze addressing that on Wednesday, saying he's tried to prepare his team for what they're about to face, but ultimately he said nothing compares to actual game time plays. And we're going to have to play a lot of young kids come Saturday, and playing in a wild environment like Kyle Field. We try every way in the world to get them ready for that in practice and things, but you just can't duplicate it. Exactly what they're getting ready to experience. He said some of these younger kids and transfers, regardless of what happens, we're on the right track. It's just you're going to find out how we handle the challenge of that environment, playing against an elite football team, an elite roster in a hostile environment. We're going to find out a lot about our football team for sure. Auburn did have that nice road test 2 weeks ago going out to Cal, and they were able to win that one, but obviously going to an SEC road environment is going to be tough. It's an early kickoff this week for the Tigers and Aggies, 11 a.m. Central, so maybe that plays in Auburn's favor. We'll see, but certainly A&M, very talented, loaded with a lot of talent on that roster. And speaking of Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher, talking with the media yesterday, he talked about three important aspects of offensive consistency. He said, I think three things. Number one is execution. We got three things. We've got execution going on because of experience and leadership. Our experience now with all our young players who played a year ago with injuries and mismatching fronts and receivers and all that. He said our quarterback in the second year of the system, he's grasping all the details, but at the same time, I think we've got more experience, great leadership. We're executing at a high level. He gained confidence, consistency at the positions, physicality, offensive line is really helping us. The Aggies have put up 44 points per game this year. That ranks third in the SEC through week 3. They've scored 10 touchdowns. That's second in the SEC behind Vanderbilt, who's played 4 games. The Aggies and everybody else have only played 3. And their quarterback, Connor Wegman, has been really good, taking that big jump from playing as a freshman last year to playing as a sophomore, and sounding like he might get 2 of his weapons back this weekend, Evan Stewart and Noah Thomas. So if that happens, look out. The Aggies offense will be in full effect. And look, they beat up on Ole Monroe last week, a little bit different, but playing Auburn, 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern on ESPN. This is going to be a tough test for both sides. I just like A&M, man. I think they got a ton of talent, and I think Hugh Freeze is doing a good job of building, but I don't think they're there yet. I think this will be a really tough test for Peyton Thorne and some of those guys. And look, they could surprise me. They could go into College Station and play really, really well, but I just think this is going to be a tough test for Hugh Freeze's bunch, and I think Jimbo Fisher and folks will prevail, but we will see. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, of course, we got some more news and notes going on around the conference, so we'll get to that in just a second. Well, first, I want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at Jase Medical. Like, everybody should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. And that is why Jase Medical is offering the Jase case. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. It gives you peace of mind that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. They are simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off when you use our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDON. Again, it's simple. You go online, you fill out a form, you get your prescription, life-saving medications right to your door. The Jase case, giving you peace of mind that you're not just hoping that you have access to that medication in an emergency. Jase Medical, making sure you have it in hand. Check them out, jasemedical.com. That's promo code LOCKEDON. Check them out today. Going along here, Locked On SEC. We want to remind you guys every Friday, Locked On, kicking it up with our coverage with the Locked On College Football Kickoff Live Show. 11 a.m. to 1 Eastern every Friday on the Locked On YouTube College or Locked On College YouTube channel. Everywhere we have a Locked On College show on the YouTube channel, you will find that show live with insight analysis from all of our great hosts. Previewing the weekend that is to come. Check that out wherever you get your podcast. 11 a.m. to 1 Eastern, Locked On College YouTube channel. It is the Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. All right, we got more stuff to get into as we continue to go around the conference. And let's head out to Baton Rouge as Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers suffered that week one loss to Florida State, of course, but they are looking much better as of late. Brian Kelly was asked on the SEC teleconference on Wednesday, is the SEC down? Brian Kelly said, look, I don't get a chance to dive into it, certainly in the manner that fans would, but I get bits and pieces of it. Certainly the narrative is because LSU lost, Alabama lost, and got a long season ahead of us. Georgia's still the two-time national champion in the SEC. He said, so last I checked, Georgia's still undefeated. I just think that's a news cycle kind of narrative. I just think you play the games, you continue to do the things that you need to do, and it changes every week. Everybody's talking about how difficult it was at Florida, and look at how well they're playing. So I just think all the teams in this league are difficult to play against, and each coach in the league respects each other. I just think we're all focused on developing our teams. LSU, they get a big test this week with Arkansas coming to town. They're coming off their home loss to BYU, but they want to bounce back. That game will be 6 p.m. Central on ESPN this Saturday night. Now, Brian Kelly also addressing the health of his starting safety, Greg Brooks, on Wednesday. The LSU senior safety underwent emergency surgery a couple of days ago to remove a large brain tumor. That news came out on Wednesday, and Brian Kelly addressing it saying, we were trying to find out what his symptoms were. He had an episode. He had dizziness on Wednesday last week, and finally he said enough's enough, and we went and got an MRI, and that's when they found a tumor, and all the vertigo he had throughout the spring, turns out that was a symptom of a larger issue. Brian Kelly asked if Greg Brooks has a chance to return to the playing field this year. He said, that's so hard for me to know. There's so many unanswered questions. I don't know I could even begin to give you the medical pieces relative to his surgery and give you an educated answer on that. I saw him in the hospital Sunday. He's still coming out of heavy sedation, so we weren't even able to have a lucid conversation. But I know before he went in, he was pretty adamant about wanting to play again this year, but that's just Greg Brooks. Brooks had 2 pass deflections earlier this season, and look, we wish Greg Brooks the best. We had him on the show here on Locked On earlier this year, and it was awful news to hear that he had a brain tumor, but had it removed, and now we wait and see. Hopefully that took care of the issue, and Greg will be fine. But playing football is something that's I think just kind of a side note now. More importantly, is him just getting healthy and becoming a healthy human being. Before we talk anything football related, but we wish Greg Brooks the best of luck, and again, appreciate him for joining us earlier this year. Tremendous guest with us. Over at Arkansas, Sam Pittman getting ready to head to Baton Rouge to play LSU, and talk about the injury status for his stud running back, Rocket Sanders, who's missed the last couple weeks. Sanders been out with that left knee injury he sustained in the season opener against Western Carolina on Wednesday. Sam Pittman saying Sanders is making strides, but it's still too early to know if he will be ready to play against LSU this weekend. He said, I don't have an update on his status, but I can tell you he ran well yesterday. He's progressing faster than I thought he might, but I don't know whether he'll be able to play or not this weekend. Of course, Rocket Sanders, one of the best running backs in the SEC and the country a year ago. Arkansas LSU, 6 p.m. Central on ESPN this Saturday night. By the way, I saw it very odd. Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit calling that game. Just kind of funny. They always call the biggest game of the week, and they're calling LSU Arkansas, where LSU's a 17.5-point home favorite. So found a little bit odd they're calling that game, but be interesting to watch that one. All right, over at South Carolina, injury updates on their front. Juice Wells suffered a broken bone on Saturday, left the Georgia game in the first half. After catching a touchdown pass this week, Shane Beamer telling reporters that the injury is not necessarily season-ending. He said on Saturday that because Juice Wells already had a screw in the foot from a previous injury, that this one may heal faster. He saw a specialist this week. He's ruled out for this week's game against Mississippi State, but Shane Beamer said the Gamecocks will monitor the situation and will do what's best for him. But Juice Wells, 3 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown this year. Last year, he was a stud. Over 900 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, came up so big in some of those big games down the stretch for the Gamecocks. And see what happens with him. Last season, ranked 3rd in the SEC with over 5 receptions per game. And phenomenal season last year, but we'll see what happens with him. Now, early on this season, South Carolina's offense has not been very balanced. They've thrown for a ton of yards. They've thrown for over 1,000 yards, but just 159 rushing yards. And Shane Beamer said, we got to find some balance on offense. He said, I've said it before, I want to be the team that has the ability to run the football, and we need to run it. We know we can throw the ball, but we got to have that balance. There's no question. We haven't run the football consistently enough in our first 3 games this season. We need to be better. Now, as far as South Carolina goes, Beamer said that, look, there's going to be some runs that we call that may look ugly this week against Mississippi State, but that's just their defense and how they play. He said we need to understand that we need to continue to come back to the run game and be willing to call those plays. The quarterback, Spencer Rattler, says, look, we've had a tough go so far, but we're still a good team. He said every game in the SEC is challenging, so we're going to prepare the same way. We had a great week last week preparing for Georgia. We're going to have another great week this week preparing for Mississippi State. And hopefully we'll set a tone, get back on track. So we did a lot of good things offensively, but we left a lot of stuff on the field. It was exactly what we thought it was post-game. We shot ourselves in the foot. It stings, but it's in the past now. We got to turn the page. And so South Carolina will do that this week playing Mississippi State. Over at Georgia, Kirby Smart, they're trying to find their consistency. Kirby Smart talking about his run game, which was not very good through the first couple weeks, but got back on track this week against South Carolina. Dejon Edwards leading the charge in the running back room. But Kirby said there are several players that could step up at any moment, including Andrew Paul, who missed all of his freshman year with a torn ACL. He said, look, we got a ton of guys like Clark, Paul, Lyneth Whitehead. All those guys have been doing a good job getting better each week. They get a lot of reps. I think the opportunity's there for a lot of backs to get some playing time. Georgia's running backs getting a chance to show what they can do against UAB this weekend. Kirby Smart also talked about, was asked about the significance playing game number 100 at Georgia this Saturday. He said, look, I didn't even realize that was coming, but it's one of those things. If you do a good job, you recruit good players, you have a good organization, good support, that allows you to get to coaching 100 games, but certainly want to go out there and play our best. On the other side, UAB, head coach Trent Dilfer talking about the challenge of this game. He said, look, I've never played anything like this. This is better than a Super Bowl. The SEC slogan, it just means more. It is true. And they're facing a tough test going into Athens this weekend. And UAB, they're trying to bounce back after their loss to ULL last week, 41-21. They also lost to Georgia Southern on the road. Georgia, they're still undefeated. And despite their 24-14 win against South Carolina last week, they are looking to keep this thing rolling against UAB this week. The two teams set to face one another, 7:30 Eastern on Saturday night in Athens. Over at Mississippi State, Zach Arnett talking on Wednesday on the coaches' teleconference, talking about the Bulldogs' recent players-only meeting. He said he does not think the meeting was particular to last week's blowout loss to LSU. It's just something they've done as a veteran group looking to improve each week. He said they've done this every week, and I don't think it's particular to the past week, but I think it speaks to the veterans of this group that we have in our locker room. The fact that they know usually your best teams and best cultures you have are when its players lead, and we have to have those guys lead. Mississippi State looking to bounce back against the loss to LSU this past week. Now, Mississippi State football also adding a non-conference game to their schedule for 2024. They will host Toledo Saturday, September 14th next year. According to FBSschedules.com, the Bulldogs will pay the Rockets $1.2 million to come to Davis Wade to play the game. Toledo takes the place of Utah State, which dropped the Bulldogs in favor of USC back in July. So Mississippi State's matchup against the Rockets will come during week 3, following matchups to start next season against Eastern Kentucky and Arizona State. And one more Mississippi State note, Dan Mullen apparently will no longer be calling the SEC rivalry matchup between Ole Miss and Mississippi State later this season. That was initially reported by Brad Logan covering Ole Miss, but Mullen had noted on the Stingray show earlier this month that he would be on the call with Matt Berry. Of course, Mullen was previously head coach at Mississippi State, but Egg Bowl, it's a big one, and that rivalry has been such a good one, but it sounds like Dan Mullen will not be on the call for that one any longer. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, still got more tidbits. We're going to continue to go around the conference. We'll get to that with you guys in just a second. Well, first, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. We're going to get into all of our lines and make our official SEC picks on Friday's show, but go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can find a bunch of the college lines as well as the NFL action. We got games. We got a game Thursday night. What is it? Giants and 49ers. You can get it on that. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season, right? FanDuel, they are the official partner of the NFL. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers who keep coming back and checking us out every day. We still got more tidbits. Look, we do our thing where we go around the conference. There's just a lot going on. Those Wednesday teleconferences, they reveal a lot. A lot of the coaches have a lot to say, so we got to dive right back into it. We got plenty more to discuss, so let's do it. As we jump back into it, we head out to Kentucky to talk, as we heard from head coach Mark Stoops on Wednesday. And, of course, one of the big pieces they added this offseason was Vanderbilt running back Ray Davis through the transfer portal, and he has had a nice start for the Wildcats through the first couple of weeks. Mark Stoops, high praise for him on Wednesday, talking about Ray Davis. He said, look, Ray has been a very good player for us, very consistent, gives us that strong physical style we've been looking for, but he also can make some people miss. It's been evident by his explosive runs he's had, explosive catches as well. So he has definitely made a difference for us. He said he's done a great job as far as a leader, played a lot of football in the SEC, knows what he's getting into, and I'm sure it'll be a different challenge for him this week, getting into SEC play against Vanderbilt, his former school. He said he's just got to stay within himself, play the game like he knows how to play. It was quite aggravating for me to have to sit there and watch last year's film and see what he did against us at Vanderbilt when we played him. So he's just got to do what he's capable of and trust his teammates. So Ray Davis getting a chance to return to the school he came from as Kentucky takes on Vanderbilt in Nashville. Vanderbilt came out on top last year, and Davis had 129 rushing yards and a touchdown. So Mark Stoops hoping he can do that, but this time for Kentucky against Vanderbilt. So we'll see that this week. All right, over at Mizzou, Eli Drinkwitz. It's been a tough week for them coming off of an emotional win over Kansas State, but you got to hit that reset button. You got to clear it, and Mizzou starting off 3-0, but two of their games have been decided by one score or less. Last year, Mizzou was just 1-4 in games decided by a touchdown or less. Drinkwitz saying learning from those close games last year has helped them this year. He said last year we were in some single possession games that didn't go our way. At the end of the year, we were able to find a way to do it. He said hopefully it's that confidence and belief in each other that we're going to find a way to win in the fourth quarter, and we've been able to do that so far this season. Mizzou won a very close game against Middle Tennessee in week 2, and then, of course, the field goal winning game against Kansas State this past weekend. Drinkwitz said, obviously, in the past, defense went out, got a stop. Offense got the ball back, was able to put us in position for special teams to win the game. That's a team that works together, believes in each other, and we got to continue to do that each week. Now, Drinkwitz said, fresh off the Kansas State win, they're going to St. Louis this week to go play Memphis. First time playing in that dome in 13 years. He said, our entire focus has shifted, and we're done with last week. We were focused on this week, focused on Memphis. He credited the athletic department for making the St. Louis game a possibility for their 18 players from the St. Louis area. And he said there's excitement to go back there and play. They're getting hit up. All these players are getting hit up for tickets. It's fun. It's unique. Whenever your university comes home to play, it is something to be really proud of. Again, Missouri facing Memphis. Both teams undefeated so far. One of these teams will improve to 4-0. Drinkwitz said he wants his squad to not overlook Memphis. He said, I think we took advantage of the opportunity that was presented to us, but to live in the past is to die in the present. We got to turn the page from last week and focus on this opponent. I'll be interested to see what Luther Burden does. A St. Louis native who's had a fantastic start to the year so far. Him and Brady Cook on the same page, getting things going. So we'll see what Luther Burden does against Memphis, but be a monster win for Eli Drinkwitz to beat Memphis and get to 4-0. Man, we'll be talking about Mizzou as a team that maybe we counted out at the start of the season. Over at Tennessee, Josh Heupel focused on UTSA this week on the Wednesday teleconference. He talked about the matchup. Roadrunners may or may not be without their star quarterback, Frank Harris. He did not play last week against Army. Really good player, been around there a while. What Heupel telling reporters, he said, look, every Saturday has its own identity. He said they've already noted some good responses from the loss at Florida last week. He said, now we got to go and prove it out on the field. He said, a week ago, we let one play affect the next and a little bit. As a competitor, you can't do that. So this is a good UTSA team. They're tough. They're physical. They have good players at all three levels. Every Saturday has its own identity in this league. Everyone has their own talent. If you don't perform at your highest level, it gets tough real quick. He said 2 really good days of practice. Our energy in the building has been good. And you got to take the lessons and move forward. You got to learn from it and go compete. So Vols obviously beat Virginia and Austin Peay to start their season, but slipped up and lost in the swamp this past weekend. We'll see how they respond. 4 p.m. Eastern in Knoxville against UTSA. Now, Joey Halsley, Tennessee's OC, was asked Tuesday if he thinks any of the part of the offense would run better with their 5-star freshman quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, under center. He said, look, no. Joe Milton is operating at a really high level. Joe's our QB. So whether you agree with him or not, we may see Nico at some point this season and see how he does. But for now, they're sticking with Joe Milton. They think the mistakes against Florida last week are correctable. And Josh Heupel agrees, insisting Monday, Joe Milton is continually, quote, in the right place with his decision-making and motions. So we'll see what they do against UTSA. And then lastly, over at Florida, again, coming off of a big win, Billy Napier said he knew his team had to continue their preparation. This week in practice, he's been hammering the importance of good preparation. He said, I thought we could have done a little bit better yesterday at practice, to be honest. I thought we did a lot of good things. Ultimately, we have more to prove. We have more work to do. We have to focus on what's next. So I think you prepare a certain way. It's important that you prepare with some humility. There's a confidence, a fearlessness, and a comfortability that you'd like to have. You go about your business the right way throughout the week. I think you have a chance to be in the right frame of mind when you compete. Now, Florida will get a much easier task this week in hosting Charlotte, but he said consistency week in and week out is the key. So that's a challenge for us to sustain and be consistent in every aspect of our game. He said we got to think about our vision and work that way and not compromise. So that is the thoughts of Billy Napier as the Florida Gators look to build off their big win against Tennessee last weekend. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Tomorrow on the show, we're getting ready for the weekend. We'll be making our official picks for the weekend. And we've got some big games as we get into the thick of SEC on SEC play. And so you guys were leaning heading into the weekend. Will there be some upsets? Odds are there'll be 1 or 2. We've had a couple through the first couple weeks, so we'll see what happens. But that is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Again, I'm Chris Gordy. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day and coming to us for all your daily SEC news and tidbits and conversation. And again, tomorrow will be a fun show. We'll preview all the games this weekend and give you our picks and get you guys set for SEC Week 4. But for now, I'm Chris Gordy. You guys have an awesome day, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.